The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is no substitute for professional care by your doctor or your qualified healthcare professional. Never disregard or delay professional medical advice because of something you've heard on this podcast or in any linked material. Guests who speak on this podcast express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions. Dr. Shirley neither endorses nor opposes any particular opinion discussed on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast have no relation to those of any academic, hospital, practice, institution, or other entity with which Dr. Shirley may be affiliated.
Welcome to Forever Fab, the podcast on fashion, the art of living, and all things beauty. This podcast is curated by Dr. Shirley Madhere, MD, as the definitive source of holistic wellness through beauty.
Hey everyone, it's Dr. Shirley. Welcome to 15 Minutes of Fab, a segment of the Forever Fab podcast where I review products, services, experiences, and frankly, whatever, in 15 minutes or less. If the full-length podcast is a couture dress, for example, then 15 Minutes of Fab is like a button-down French cuff white shirt paired with leather leggings. If you don't have time to tune into the full-length podcast, then check out 15 Minutes of Fab, just a small dose. Some have considered it truth and beauty or plastic surgery secrets or as a nerdy or academic take on wellness and beauty with a dash of fashion. Consider it what you may. My aim is to engage you as a credible and authoritative voice in most, if not all aspects of beauty and wellness with a dash of fashion. That includes products, wellness services, technologies, innovations, new scientific research, and plastic surgery. As the founder of Holistic Plastic Surgery, my approach to beauty is through a lens of wellness that's grounded in science, backed by medical study and research, strengthened by my clinical experience, and bolstered by my surgical training with the use of principles and techniques of plastic surgery. And then there's my love of fashion. Of course, I feel uniquely qualified to talk with you about beauty, wellness, aesthetics, and plastic surgery, as well as products and services within those spaces, not only because of my extensive, and may I add, expensive training and expansive background, but also because I'm one of you. Many of the human issues around aging and being a fierce fab person, as well as an agent for positive change, I live these too, and I try. You're not alone. So together we can help the world become a more beautiful, forever fab place. So if you'll have me and give me at least 15 minutes of your time, let's get at it. In this new year, I've decided that it will be one of expansion and discovery. So I'll explore all sorts of topics, near and possibly far-fetched, while still focusing on the topics that make the Forever Fab podcast, well, fabulous, namely fashion, the art of living well or wellness, and beauty. As part of my philosophy of holistic plastic surgery, which I created well over probably now 15 years ago, where I believe that beauty emanates from within, wellness plays an integral role in my practice. And this goes for many aspects of life that help you to live in grace and beauty, including nutrition, exercise, products, services, technologies, mind, body, spirit, and science. The title of this week's episode of 15 Minutes of Fab on the Forever Fab podcast is Unshakable Confidence. The title of this episode is How to Be a Chosen One. And this is essentially a reading list we're reading from the lessons of Alan Watts through the channel Seek Motivation. Now, podcasting is fun. And of course, the Forever Fab podcast is fabulous. And it's a lot of work. It isn't always a cinch to come up with content that is engaging, entertaining, maybe a little bit educational, and provides value and contributes positively to your life. So sometimes I refer back to one of the things or some of the things that have happened in my own life. And once I put it out there live, hopefully you'll get something out of it. So the other day, I read an article that triggered one of my insecurities, right? Such as life. Then, separately, unrelatedly, but related, I had a conversation with my mother, just a pleasant, how are you, catch up, and coincidentally, out of nowhere, so it seems, but we know that doesn't really exist, quote unquote, out of nowhere, she brought up that she finally understood why so many years ago I had experienced a setback, like many, many years ago. And she just brought it up, right? Leave it to moms to know how to bring back trigger points. Anyway, and then thirdly, so like I took it as a third sign, I stumbled upon a podcast that resonated and happened to have addressed the very same situation. Again, I thought, okay, this is something perhaps that I may need to talk about or, highlight in some way or learn something from if I haven't learned the lesson already. I won't honor the issue by even mentioning it because I've done a lot of work to just keep it in the past, but I will pull an excerpt from one of the lessons of one of my newly discovered philosophers, one of my favorites now, Alan Watts. As I've mentioned on a previous episode of 15 Minutes of Fab on the Forever Fab podcast, Watts was, according to Wikipedia, a British and American writer, speaker, and, sort of entertainer in a way, self-described. And he was known for interpreting and popularizing Buddhist, Taoist, and Hindu philosophy, but for a sort of more modern, contemporary Western audience. I offer you, in the words of Alan Watts, and as reconfigured by and adapted from Seek Motivation, in his words about unshakable confidence. And I quote, "To be chosen is not to be placed above others, but to be deeply attuned to what is within. The one who has truly seen the nature of things does not cling to the illusion of superiority, because the idea of being above or below collapses when you realize it was all a game of mirrors, each ego reflecting another endlessly. When you see through the game, what remains? Not attitude, but awareness. Not arrogance, but awe. The chosen one is not trying to convince anyone of their worth. They are not negotiating their value in rooms filled with empty applause. They are not addicted to being seen because they have already seen. And what they have seen makes all the noise in the world seem like a passing breeze. There is no desire to dominate, to prove, to win, for they understand that the one who wins by force is the most insecure. The chosens are not intended or interested in such victories. They are busy flowing with life, not fighting it. They walk into rooms not to take space, but to bring presence, not to impress, but to embody. The true power of silence and stillness is that they allow us to fully inhabit our own being without distraction, without the need for validation from others, and without the incessant noise that often drowns out our deeper awareness. In silence, we find clarity. In stillness, we find presence. The chosen ones are the individuals who have tapped into a deeper sense of self and purpose and understand this on a profound level. The noise of the world may surround them, but they are not swept away by it. They are fully engaged, but their engagement comes from a place of inner peace and knowing, rather than from the need to compete or be seen. Think of the quiet power of nature, how a tree stands firm, its roots deep in the earth, not needing to announce its strength. Yet it endures storms, stands tall through decades, even centuries. A mountain remains unmoved no matter the winds or the rains, not because it seeks attention, or because it fights against the elements, but because it simply is. Its power lies in its presence, in its rootedness, and in its acceptance of the ever-changing world around it. This is the kind of power the chosen ones embody, a power that comes from the knowledge that they are enough simply by being. They do not need to show the world their strength because their strength is inherent and does not need to be demonstrated. They do not seek to convince anyone of their worth because they have already recognized it within themselves. In a world that glorifies action, achievement, and outward success, the chosen ones stand as reminders that there is a deeper way of living, one that does not require the constant proving of self. In silence, we connect with the truth of whom we are. We let go of the masks and the roles we play, and we begin to understand that there is no need to strive or to push against life in order to be seen. The quieter we become, the more we hear the whispers of our own inner wisdom. In this stillness, the chosen ones find their true power. The power of being present in the moment, of being aligned with their purpose, and of trusting that they are enough just as they are. The world often tells us that in order to be successful, we must be loud, we must be forceful, we must constantly push forward. This is the mentality that leads to burnout, to anxiety, and to the feeling of never being enough. When we live from this place, we are constantly striving for something outside of ourselves, always seeking approval or recognition from the world around us. But true power comes when we stop looking outside of ourselves for validation and instead begin to trust in the power that lies within. The chosen ones know that their worth is not dependent on the approval of others, but on their ability to stay true to themselves and to live in alignment with their deepest truth. This is the kind of knowing that cannot be found through books or external teachings. It is the knowing that comes from within, from the deep well of wisdom that resides in every person waiting to be accessed. The chosen ones are attuned to these whispers. They do not need to fill the space with words or noise because they trust that the answers they seek will come when the time is right. They know that the universe is constantly communicating with them, and they are open and receptive to its guidance. Ego and superiority are illusions, constructs of the mind that attempt to define us based on external comparisons. The ego is a complex mechanism, one that thrives on division, judgment, and the illusion of separation. It compels us to see ourselves in relation to others, often in terms of hierarchy, where some are above and some and others below. This mindset of superiority and inferiority is a product of our attachment to identity, to labels, to the need to be seen as more than or less than someone else. But when we strip away the layers of ego, we begin to realize that these distinctions are entirely fabricated and do not reflect the true nature of whom we are. The chosen ones, those who have transcended the illusions of ego and superiority, understand this deeply. They have come to realize that there is no above, no below. There is only the vast interconnected web of existence where every part is equally important. At the core of the ego is a deep-seated insecurity, a fear of not being enough. This fear drives the need to compare, to compete, and to seek validation from others. The ego believes that it must assert itself in order to be recognized, to be valued. It builds walls between us and others, creating a sense of separation that leads to judgment and competition. In this state, We view others as threats or obstacles to our own success, rather than recognizing them as fellow travelers on the same journey. The ego thrives on these distinctions, feeding on the idea that we must always be striving to be better, smarter, more successful, more worthy than those around us. This mentality, however, is based on an illusion, a false narrative that we have bought into and have come to believe. The truth, however, is that when we let go of the need to compare and compete, we begin to see that all of us are expressions of the same source manifestations, of the same energy. The chosen ones have come to realize that their true power lies not in the accumulation of external achievements or recognition, but in the acceptance of their own inherent worth. They no longer need to prove themselves because they know deep down that they are already whole. In embracing this truth, they let go of the need to compare themselves to others and the need to compete for validation. They move through the world with acquired confidence, secure in the knowledge that their worth is not determined by anything external. They do not need to prove anything to anyone because they already know who they are. The chosen ones understand that when we let go of the need to compare, to compete, and to elevate ourselves above others, there is no hierarchy, no better or worse. There is only the beauty of diversity, the richness of each individual path. When we embrace this truth, we are free to live authentically without the need to prove ourselves or to measure our worth against anyone else. In this freedom, we discover the peace and joy that comes from knowing that we are enough just as we are. End quote. This concludes this episode of 15 Minutes of Fab on the Forever Fab podcast. Thank you for listening. And until next time, stay beautiful and forever fabulous, unshakably, inside and out. Thank you for listening to this week's Forever Fab podcast episode of 15 Minutes of Fab. Until next time, live well, prosper, and stay beautiful, inside and out, and stay forever fab. If you like this episode of 15 Minutes of Fab on the Forever Fab podcast, please share it and subscribe to the feed. Did you learn anything new? Review this episode by writing just one word to describe the value you got from listening today, and give this episode a 5-star rating. In case you missed it, listen to this episode, past episodes, or check out who's coming up next on foreverfabpodcast.com. If you enjoy listening to the Forever Fab podcast, get more audio and more visuals with a membership through Patreon. Choose the gold, platinum, or diamond tier for premium added content, special co-hosts, lifestyle videos, branded merchandise, and more by visiting patreon.com/foreverfab. And if you are a founder of or represent a beauty or wellness brand and you want to be featured on an episode of Forever Fab podcast segment of 15 Minutes of Fab, send me some stuff. Visit foreverfabpodcast.com and fill out the contact form. For general holistic beauty tips or to set up an appointment with me to discuss your personalized options for leveling up your beauty, go to elementsandgraces.com and sign up for my newsletter. And for an online e-consultation on time, anytime, and on your time, visit clicklift.com for your wellness, plastic surgery, and beauty questions on the go. And it's time for the elevated house call, wouldn't you say? Jet Set Beauty RX offers beauty on-call services near your home or other domicile, delivering beauty in the privacy of a medically equipped, state-of-the-art mobile aesthetics unit. Reserve at jetsetbeautyrx.com. That's all for now. Thank you for sharing the love. Goodbye, gorgeous.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Forever Fab, the podcast on fashion, the art of living, and all things beauty, curated by Dr. Shirley Madhere, MD. Live beautifully and help make the world a more beautiful place.